Hello and welcome to ThePrint softcover. Today we are joined by two guests, Lieutenant General Ramesh Kulkarni and Anjali Kapre. We are going to be discussing their book, Siachen 1987, Battle for the Frozen Frontier. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Both of us are very happy to be here.
Glad we could do this. Lieutenant General Ramesh Kulkarni was commissioned into the Indian Army's Garhwal Rifles in June 1956. Through his career, he has commanded battalions across India, including in Arunachal Pradesh and Nagaland. Though specifically, he was the commander of the 28th Infantry Division at the Siachen Glacier, which is going to form a central point of our discussion today. He retired as the Adjutant General of the Indian Army. Anjali Kapre is the Deputy Head and Head of Student Life of Bombay International School in Mumbai. Before we move forward, I'd just like to quickly show the book and unveil it. Thank you. Yeah, we've fantastic. So I recently read the book, and what I thought is that with some very granular detail, personal anecdotes, and recollection of instances that have been lived, Siachen 1987 tells the story of Lieutenant General Kulkarni's command of the 28th Infantry Division from 1987 to 1989. This command included the responsibility of guarding India's entire northern borders, including the world's highest battlefield, Siachen. In 1984, amid escalating tensions at the border between India and Pakistan, the Indian Army raised the 28th Infantry Division in Ladakh, which was responsible for safeguarding this entire northern border. This included the line of control with Pakistan, the Tibetan Chinese areas of this border, across the Karakoram Pass. Essentially, Siachen 1987 gives a rare glimpse to understand and visualize the Siachen Glacier, the India-Pakistan conflict, and the Indian Army's involvement in all of this through a personal lens, that too of a commander, which is rare and really insightful to have read. So I'd like to just begin by asking you, your foreword to the book begins by talking about why now. So if I'd like to know if you could tell our viewers why now, how come 35 years later you finally wrote this for us?
I think I've been hesitating to pen down my experiences, I think for a number of reasons. First and foremost, I think the experiences and the situations I had encountered were so intense. I was hesitating to recount them, relive them, because in penning them down, I was going to live through them. And I was avoiding that sort of situation for a very long time. My wife, my children, my friends, everybody was very much, goading me to please jot down for the posterity. But I was feeling, should I live through that experiences again? Would I be able to put it in words that it will be comprehended by people? Would I be able to do this effort? Perhaps I'm not a writer, not very good at such things. I'm a doer. Given a mission, I could accomplish. But writing down was an entirely different ballgame. That's why I was my hesitation. But I think a tipping point came, and that was in 2015, when I realized that the battalion, which was a part of the whole success story during my tenure of the command of the division, 8 JAK LI, they were given the title 8 JAK LI, the Siachen, very rare honor. When I met them, I visited the battalion. They invited me to the mess to honor me, to address them at the Sainik Sammelan. When I saw those faces, none of them were the one which are familiar to me, except the Subda Major. And the Subda Major, something which he remembered so intensely, when he heard that I was in Delhi, he insisted that he must come and call on me. And it was an emotional interaction that we had about the period when he was a sepoy. He was decorated with the Veer Chakra because of his gallant actions. And he and myself sat down, and his commanding officer, my wife, were there. They're just listening. They just didn't know what we were talking about because it was emotional interaction which we had. And that set me. I think that was, the worst tipping point which I could ever experience. I realized the battalion itself doesn't know much details. I talking to the officers and the ladies in the mess. Yes, they were proud about what they were achieved, but disconnect. I think there was no record by anywhere for them to fall back on, to read it, refresh themselves. And I think that is where I got down to it.
So if I could just say something. So you're basically saying that because there was no recorded history of what had transpired, and it was all sort of word of mouth which was trickling down, and now the information had decreased. That's why you wanted to then pen this down?
Also, I think the perceptions that were put on paper which were available or are available today, otherwise, I think they are from the various perspectives, like the soldier on the front line. Yeah, he will see the battle in his own dimensions, from his own plane. A company commander who is controlling the battle in the front line, is controlling a certain post. He will see it from his perspective. But the battle is not only planned, conducted, fought or won at that level only. And that was the level which me at my division headquarters had to experience it, and I had understood it. That is why I thought the perception from my understanding, the way I experienced it, I think without that, I think the whole total picture was just not complete. That's how I decided I must give the total picture. Also, when I read the Pakistani version of these battles, I realized not too wrong, but definitely not the correct. After all, the perception from Pakistan side without knowing excessive details would be one. We writing about Pakistan Army's actions without knowing much of their details would be one. So there are various perceptions. I thought Indian Army's perception, 28 Infantry Division's perception, a total picture is something which needs to be recorded.
So, truly, sir, and we're glad that this has finally come through now. Because as you said, there was only sort of anecdotal evidence, there was perception from the Pakistani side, but not a macro picture, which now comes quite fantastically in this book. Talking about the writing of the book, Anjali, I'd like to specifically ask you. So as Sir mentions through the book that you helped him pen down the emotions and you helped him take it all out on paper. Could you talk to us through that process, how that started? Was this also in 2015?
No, actually, I think Dad's mind started whirring in 2015, but and I think he started thinking about the fact that he should write. But honestly, he didn't really mention it to me at all. It came through in 2020, and I remember distinctly the date. It was just prior to Holi, March 2020, when I was visiting him in Pune, and he said, my division wants me to send a record of my tenure. And will you help me write it? And I, of course, very, very happily said yes. But my job also entails a lot of hours at work, my teaching, my leadership position. So I did say yes to him. And I went back to Mumbai wondering how this was going to work out. It was... I will never stop thanking COVID just for that reason, because 10 days later, we were hunkered in. We stayed that way for a good long time. Education refused to open up in India, so schools remained shut. And I was pretty much operating from home. So the possibility of being able to help him to write actually just opened itself out, in a way that I couldn't have imagined. But if you come down to the writing itself, both of us actually weren't sure of how this was going to go. He said, well, I'm not a man of words, I'm a doer. And yes, writing is my love. I teach literature in school, so it's all there. But I remember starting off, in fact, I don't know, maybe that will be your question later, but I said, okay, let's begin. And his first talk to me was about the reconnaissance mission that was led by Rajiv Pandey. And I said, okay, let's start writing it. But as we wrote it down, his description would be done in what might be encapsulated in one paragraph.
Okay.
And then it was probing. Okay, what did you actually feel? What did you actually want to say to your men? And it was almost a kind of a psychiatric process of trying to get into his mind to be able to understand what he wanted to say and then finding the words for it. And I'll just end this bit because I know you'll have more questions, but there were lots of times when he would read what I've written and he would say, no, this isn't exactly what I wanted to say. And then he would actually make changes to that. And all this was happening, by the way, on Google Docs that, we were working on. There was no in-person, because lockdown meant we were hunkered in Mumbai and he was in Pune. So it was all through Google Docs, through video calls.
Okay.
And there were lots of moments, Suchet, of a great deal of impatience on my side, I do believe, because I would say, but then tell me more. If this is not what you want to say, tell me more. And he would suddenly close up and say, no, that's it. Today, I don't feel like it, because I could see that he was reliving that moment. He didn't want to say. But I think as the book started growing, that understanding that we had between us also started growing. So the co-authorship fell in place over the duration of writing. I don't think we had it very clear when we began with the whole project.
The thoughts and actions during the combat battle to be put across, to convey to her that she will find words, suitable words. It was a very slow process, but ultimately we understood. I could understand how do I convey to her what I experienced, and then she would give me expression. Is it about how you feel? I said no. That sort of a discussion and dialogue led to the.
I'm sure there must have been multiple video calls and Google Docs with the lines changing and color coding, and must have been quite a.
Yes. I would make changes in the middle of the night and I would highlight that in a bright neon yellow and tell him, look at the neon yellow stuff and tell me if that works, because we would have ended the previous day in a very grim silence because I hadn't said what I should have been saying. And he wasn't happy about it. Also, Suchet, there are a lot of technical aspects to it, right?
I was just going to ask about it. So, now you might tell us.
Yeah. So the technical aspects were particularly troublesome. He would say, this is the way it is referred to technically. And I would have to then frame my language around it so that it doesn't sound terribly off to me in terms of the English. Yeah. So we would work on those areas quite a bit. With a lot of back and forth, I think that was involved in the technicalities of the operation of the narrative itself.
So now that you're talking about the sort of technicalities and the operations again, Lieutenant General, could you please just tell us briefly what it was like when you took over the 28th Infantry Division? There was these escalating tensions and everything in 87, and then how you set everything in order in those 2 years and what that was like.
When I took over, firstly, in fact, I was nominated to take over in a very peculiar manner at the then army commander in Udhampur, because he wanted me to take over the division when there was somebody else already nominated. So he had gone to Delhi for Army Commanders Conference. He came back, and it was the Diwali day, and a Diwali party was going on in the club of the command location club. And I was there with my mother, Anjali was there, and we were sitting at the back just because there were 4 of us. I didn't want to be as a main staff officer sitting in front along with the Army Commander's line. He suddenly looked back after a while and he just signaled me. And when I went and sat next to him, he says, MGGS, I'm sending you to command the Siachen Division. I thought, there's something wrong. He turned around, tells my wife, Mrs. Kulkarni, there is some good news for your husband, not so good to you. She shot back. The whole officers, every family sitting there, fireworks taking place, all the Diwali atmosphere. She said, what is that which is good for my husband and not so good to me? He said, आपके खाविंद को हम सियाचिन डिवीजन कमांड करने भेज रहे हैं. Pin drop silence. People said, what the? I mean, is this a reward for having done a good tenure, good job in the past? But I knew he meant it. He had certain intentions. He had certain thoughts. He wanted those thoughts to be translated by somebody who will understand. And that is how I landed. Well, it was delayed. There was because of the brass tacks, there's tensions between India and Pakistan. For 3 months, I didn't go. Otherwise, I would have moved immediately after Diwali.
Were you sort of afraid coming to 20,000 feet all of a sudden from...
The fear, it was not the fear of that nature at all. I was fully aware of what the 28 was presently experiencing, the type of... At that time, there was no threats. It is just that managing a command at a super high altitude, glacial region, is all that was there. That nothing. Diwali in 1986, there was no such feelings or activity that was to be taken note of. It is only in the beginning of April 1987, I think reports started coming to the command headquarters, where I was Major General Staff, MGGS, operations man. And when I got a staff, my subordinate would say, so there is something going wrong in 28 days. I think Pakistani had come and occupied a height. Oh, they'll look after, sir. I was only a staff officer. I was just trying to understand what instructions to be given, what to convey to the army commander. But immediately after that, within a matter of fortnight, I had to go and take over the division. I had to take over the responsibility. And my predecessor, while 4 days we'd spent together, and the first day we left the divisional headquarters and went in a helicopter along the glacier, he turned around and said, Ramesh, see that height? You got to take it to. Pakistanis are sitting there. Oh my God, I said. Now I was looking at it in a different way, not as a staff officer, not as a situation being appreciated, understood, or action, but I had to take it as I was at the action end now. But 4 days later, we had to go to Limestone because both of us belonged to the same regiment, Garhwal Rifles. So after 4 days of all this, went back for 3 days, came back, and there I was. Now I had to face the situation as you can call it. It was something unbelievable. It was a massive feature which had 1,200 feet of ice wall, 80-degree incline with the crevasses and the roof. And I was shown by my predecessor and subsequently by the troops on the ground, sir, that is where the Pakistanis have come and sat down.
So is this a Quaid Post, which then became...
Yeah. And when I flew around the feature from outside and comprehended, what does it mean? I said, my God, who is going to climb this ice wall? Who is going to attack on top? I think it was something mind-boggling, the mission as it involved. But we didn't know what to do. The brigade commander, Brigadier Chandan Nugia, he had just taken over the brigade, that is Siachen brigade, looking after the glacier very intimately, great mountaineer. He was, he had a physical and mental ruggedness to climb every peak, every place and visit them. He had done that before I preached. So I discussed with him. He said, it's very difficult, but let us see. And because the Pakistan is sitting at the post in the top in the middle, 2 neighboring posts where helicopters refused to fly there because they said there is a machine gun fire coming from the top and they're going to be very casualties for the helicopters. And so for a month, there was no helicopter mission which flew to those 2 posts, did not replenish their rations, ammunition, or evacuation of the casualties took place. So the situation couldn't be tolerated indefinitely. But I think a stage came throughout the month of May when I was just getting into the picture, understanding, acclimatizing myself every day, coming from 11,000 to 20,000, spending the day with the troops, going back at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. discussing with the brigade commander, the commanding officers. I said, how do we go about it? The brigade commander, being a mountaineer, says, sir, we'll set up small party, a reconnaissance party, under a youngster who will see whether this vice wall can be ascended in the hours of darkness. Only during darkness, dark nights like new moon, because they will be unobserved. And let him go and have a look at it, and then we'll make a plan.
So just to briefly interrupt you, for our viewers, Lieutenant General Kulkarni is now telling us the story, which many of you may have heard, of how Quaid Post was retaken by the Indian Army under his command. So, sir, thank you. Sorry for that brief interruption.
Right. Then the month of May passed because we had a latitude that the posts were reasonably well stocked for rations, ammunition, and there were no casualties reported which required evacuation. But at the end of May, a report started coming. These two posts are running out of fuel, kerosene. One post was running out of matchboxes to light the fire. Now, this is something which commanding officer of that battalion, that area said. That is the commanding officer of the 8th JAK LI. He says, sir, how are they going to light the primer stove, which is the means for keeping themselves warm, melting the snow, cooking? No kerosene, no matchboxes. So we knew that we have got to act very fast. We have got the time available is very short. 1st of June, the new army commander, General B.C. Nanda, took over. And as he was told there is a crisis in the glacier concern, to the 6th day of his taking over, he decided to come and visit the glacier. He had never had an experience of the glacier areas, just like me. I would at least see as an MGG's Northern Command, along with the Army Commander, I had visited in various posts. But he had the first time he was coming. And 6th of June, believe me, was my 25th year of wedding and anniversary. And with all this thing was happening here in my sector, my wife was getting uncomfortable. He hasn't even sent me greetings for today. Leave aside coming here. What's wrong? Is he forgotten? I had no time. I really never thought of the 6th of June, our 25 years of a wedding. That is the day Army Commander landed. And he came. I brought him to the base camp. And I just told him, sir, there is a criticality. These two posts are running out of fuel and matchboxes. I had to launch helicopter sorties. The head of the helicopter pilots, Colonel Tom Dillard, he told me, sir, there'll be 60% casualties in this mission. Do you accept it? I had to convey this to the Army Commander. I said, so this is what it the criticality. The rate of casualties of the helicopters, as assessed by the pilots, is 60%. But I have no choice. Either the 40% will freeze to death, 40 men, or I take a risk and launch these sorties. I said that, and I told my other staff for the base camp, please look after the Army Commander, give him breakfast. And I called all the 12 helicopter pilots. I said, boys, I hope you are aware of the situation. He said, yes, sir, we are aware. There's a criticality at the Zamar and Sonam. Boys, will you undertake this mission to supply these two posts? Because the boys are going to freeze to death. He says, sir, you know, our assessment is 60% casualties for the helicopter. Johukum, that's the exact word he used. Tom Dillard. And the 12 young boys, majors, captains, they were looking into my eyes. Kya bolte ho, bolo na bhi. What is the order? I had only few seconds to react. I said, gentlemen, I'm fully seized with the dangers involved. But the risk is 40 men freezing to death. I want you to go for this mission. Tom Dillard said, Inshallah, hum wapas aayenge. And there was, out of the 12, 8 pilots, the 4 helicopters, undertook the launch. They were launched immediately. And 2 helicopters which were there at the base camp, I told the army commander, sir, I launched this mission. Let us go to the brigade battalion headquarters at Kumar, which is at 15,000, and wait there. Because waiting at the base camp itself has no meaning. And in any case, army commander is very perturbed and upset. I come for the first time, but I've been left to somebody to have a breakfast. He's interacting with the pilots. He's launching the missions on his own. And he's coming back and tell me the mission has been launched. I have no option but to launch the missions at the earliest. We came to the Kumar, that is the battalion headquarters. And I can tell you, all this time, I was just hoping I will hear the sounds of the helicopters returning and I will spot them on the horizon somewhere. Until that happened, I don't think my mind was busy enough. What was happening to my inside, it's very difficult to find it in words.
I'm sure so.
I saw the first 2 helicopters returning. I said, thank God, we can do it. We can do it. We can do it again. Yeah, that is how we could replenish this post. But now the question came, how long could we continue?
So just to ask, so could you tell us then of how the capture took place? How, because many people have heard the tales of Captain Bana Singh and what happened there when they went to then take the post.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, ultimately, this Captain, Second Lieutenant Rajiv Pandey gave us a clear picture that we can climb the wall and go up. But he tried to find out much more. He said, let me see what some Pakistanis are doing there. How many are there? He got shot up. When he got shot up, all the 4 fellows were, he along with the 3 soldiers, and their dead bodies could be seen from the battalion headquarters at Kumar. And every day I would go to battalion headquarters, Subdar Major would come to me with a prasad and say, Jai Mata Di, Saab ji, hamare jawanon ki laashein wapas laani hai. I said, yes. No, that sort of a dialogue, day in and day out, was taking place. And they were seeing the dead just lying on the snow. So we decided that a mission has to be launched to not only to retrieve the bodies, but to capture this post. And that is where we could not pull troops from the post. We had to get it people who were already there at the base camp, reserve, just come for the relief. And then Brigadier Nugyal, who was the brigade commander, I said, Chandan, you get hold of the situation because the CO cannot come down, leaving his command post as the commander of the company battalion headquarters. So Chandan Nugyal, and a couple of visits with the CO, they selected the people there. Out of 120, say who all were prepared to volunteer for this mission. They know 4 people have been shot dead. This mission is dangerous. All 120 hands which were at the 8 JAK LI boys at the base camp went up. General Nugyal and the CO decided to select people. And there was Bana Singh, he was in charge of the stores of the battalion sector, Naib Sultan. Naturally, these duties are rotated. He was there, so he said, look after the store for a while. He said, I want to go. So he insisted that I must go. He was included. The Brigadier Nugyal then took over the whole situation, selected 60 men out of the 120. They made them march from the base camp to Kumar, which took about 3 days for each group to reach there. And from there, with 300 helicopter sorties, they were reached at the base of this Quaid Post. And when we selected 60, it was because every 2 men who were landed at that altitude from 15 to 20, 1 person had to be brought back because he could not stand that change of height suddenly. So he was brought back. Ultimately, 30 men could be found who could accept that change and stood firm there. Now, having done this, they could not be launched for an operation immediately because all operations in the snow and glaciated areas had to be during the new moon phase of the moon. And so, though they reached there about 20th of June, we had to wait till till later part, when there's about a couple of days before the new moon and about that period. And so Major Varinder Singh was selected as the leader. He, along with these 30 men, were tasked. You climb up now. We have been seen that our ropes have been fixed by the earlier party. You climb on the same ropes. Get up on top. Prepare yourself and launch the assault. Whatever is there, you'll have to find out. There was no artillery support possible because the feature was so small. It was a crested feature. Only a single gun could fire. A single 105 millimeter gun could fire. 130 millimeter guns, which were effective, could not be used for fire support. And a neighboring post, that Amar post, could fire by observation with a machine gun. That was all the fire support available. And everything had to be devised by Major Varinder with his 30 boys, which were tasked to go up and down. First time when they went up, oh my God, we thought they will find the rope and go up. They could not locate the ropes which Lieutenant Rajiv Pandey had fixed. Whole night they searched around in the darkness. They couldn't locate, came back. Next day, they carried out a little bit of movement around and they located the ropes. But they had to wait again for the night to climb up. They climbed up. As soon as they reached, Major Varinder said, I won't wait for anything. I will got to climb. Let me go and attack whatever is there. He gave orders, troops started moving forward, inching forward. I won't say moving forward, inching forward, because at that print, and the post is around 22,000. You can just grasp and inch, take a step ahead each time. The troops found that weapons were jammed because of the frozen moisture in the air.
Right, yeah.
They couldn't fire. They tried to communicate to the CO. The diaphragms were jammed because of they required certain amount of flexibility to vibrate, to communicate. They could not. So, CO was not in a position to communicate. Major Varinder Singh was not in a position to protest the attack. Next morning, myself and the brigade commander went there, talked to the CO. Morning sun.
Did you go to where they were at 22,000 feet? Is that?
No.
Okay.
You see, as a commander,
Yeah.
having made a plan, commander cannot be jumping into the front line. He has to control, regulate, help, and see what happens.
Yeah.
So myself and the brigade commander and the commanding officer, having made the plan, briefed everybody.
Yeah.
We were just waiting in our own post to see what had develops and what action to be taken. So second day, Major Varinder was told, heat up the weapons on a primer stove, light up the stove, heat up the weapons, and then go move in for attack at night. He tried that. It didn't work. A certain amount of movement forward took place, casualties took place, but attack could not go further beyond because the weapons would not respond at all. Third morning, when myself and the brigade commander reached the battalion headquarters, CO said, sir, these boys have been there at 22,000 for 2 nights. Now, this is the third day and the third night is coming. They cannot last out there. You please, as soon as after a while, when radio set started functioning, he said, sir, speak to Major Varinder. I spoke to Varinder. I said, Varinder, can you last out for another night? He said, no, sir. Either I come down, rest, and relaunch the operation, I cannot last out. So we discussed, myself, Brigadier Nogial, the brigade commander, the CO, having taken all this trouble of climbing up, if they're going to come down, what will happen? Because by the time Pakistanis will be alert, they will prevent this part of climbing up. So collectively, we took a decision. I think either the attack takes place during the daytime or they come back. That's all. So I spoke to Varinder. I said, Varinder, would you attack during the daylight? He said, sir, it's very dangerous. It's very risky. We will all be sitting duck in the daylight. But there is no option, sir. Otherwise, I'll have to come back. I said, okay, son, go ahead. 11:30 in the morning, we'll be starting your attack. And whatever support is possible fire can be brought down, will be done. And best of luck. That is all that we could do, because nobody could do anything sitting at 15,000 battalion headquarters. 22,000 the troops are there. With great difficulty, they had climbed up. 2 nights they had spent without shelter, without whatever dry rations, chanas or chakarpalas, melting the snow and drinking water and making some.
It's still remarkable, sir, that there was even a bit of communication, because at that height, maybe a decade before, it would have even been tough to have communication.
Daytime, the communications could take place. That is how I could speak to him. And having told him, assured him, whatever is possible, we'll do it. Please progress the attack today. So third day, he started progressing the attack. I was there up to 3 o'clock at the battalion headquarters, myself, brigade commander. And we were all anxious to know how far have they progressed ahead. There had to be, somebody giving fire support, somebody moving ahead, fire support, movement. And they had to traverse right up to where their bunker or sort of a shelter was created. And there was a heavy machine gun mounted there, which was the bane for our helicopters and other planes. Well, our 3 o'clock pilot said, "Sir, you cannot stay here. We're getting last light for flying out. And you cannot, having come from the new headquarters, stay at 15,000 and be safe around here." So the brigade commander and myself both left. He reached his brigade headquarters, Partapur, and I reached Nemo, my div headquarters. Within half an hour, a message came through brigade headquarters. They captured Quaid Post. I think it was something which I felt like, till that time. Did it go wrong? What will go wrong? Is it going to be the disaster like Rajiv Pandey's petrol? Can we make it in the daylight? And the third phase of that attack was Bana siege. It was the same. So, in the whole process, all the 30 men, the type of courage they showed, because to stay, move ahead, give fire support. So 1, 2, 3. There were 3 phases, type of phases. The attack was launched. Bana Singh was in the third. And when he was going, his CEO was telling him on the radio, said, "Bana Singh, khabe passe machine gun da fire aa raha hai, khayal rakhiye." Oh, koi gal nahi. He moved ahead. The third phase, they succeeded in overrunning the Pakistani, the last remnants of the post. I read the Pakistani version of this very thing, JAK LI attacking, and what physically happened. At times one feels a little bit of amused, but it was something very great that our troops could do it. 30 men achieved.
Is it a very different version what you've read in the Pakistani side, what they've said of the capture?
Pakistanis have recorded that entire 300 men of JAK LI were assaulting. Because as far as they are concerned, the fellows who were sitting there, may have been few people left over. After all that threat, fighting and whatever the casualty, they must have seen people just moving. So they thought it was the whole battalion assaulting. That is how the perception.
That's how courageous and valiantly they fought, just the 30 men.
Yes.
Anjali, specifically to you, I'd like to ask, were you aware of anything that was going on? Was there any communication at the time?
So interestingly, and the book has just about 4 pages, my brother was visiting my father. So we used to go in little dribs and driblets to visit dad at the headquarters. So each of us has had our time at Nemo. And for me, there was this almost a sense of guilt, actually, as I was writing the book, knowing that, that I didn't know anything about the intensity of this period of time. On the one hand, I think we never, as a family, had my father air out whatever was happening at his work end ever. I do believe that he shared with my mother, but I think even with her, there were lots of times in the writing of this book that she would say, oh, but Ramesh, I don't remember you saying this or telling us. So as far as the intensity of this period goes, zero. I was actually, I got engaged at the end of 1987. So my husband and I were pretty much seeing each other in Mumbai then. So very cut off from the intensity of what Dad was going through. My brother was there actually. And my mother and I in Mumbai were clueless about the operation that was launched for securing the Quaid Post. My brother wrote my brother is not a tremendous writer. An 8-side letter came to Mumbai describing, and we were able to carry just 4 sides of that letter in the book itself. But my brother just went nuts describing the nature of the action. So a lot of it for us in Mumbai came through with that letter. And I do know that the Indian media was not covering anything. Yeah. And that was one of the things that kept everything quiet from their end as well. So they weren't talking about it to the media. Yeah. So I really do believe that there is, like I said, almost a sense of underlying guilt that we didn't know this. And there was just too much, when I was writing the book, there was just too much that Dad was dealing with. And then not to even get a sense of it was a little troubling, if I may say so.
Definitely. It must have been quite, perhaps, not disturbing, for the lack of a better word, to now grasp what all was actually going on at that time. And also communication being so different at the time. Maybe today you would have known a bit more, but I guess it's perhaps for the better that maybe you didn't know the intensity.
So actually, even telephones were not possible, Suchet. The communication between Ladakh and Mumbai was through a radio operator. I mean, a radio operator had to convey messages to anybody outside of that sector. So Dad, even having a phone call was not possible during that period.
And there was no phone call in Bombay House either.
Yeah. So those were the days when even a landline you had to have a waiting period for it. So no chance. So very, very different in terms of
different reality.
Yes, very different reality about what was happening on ground,
So now that we've discussed one of the most pertinent operations of the time, I wanted to talk to you about the human side of things that the book talks about. So first, to you, Anjali, you alluded to a bit of it right now. What was it like to know, not specifically about the operation, but that your father was there in commanding the division, there were hostilities going on, and there were these operations being conducted. What was that like for you?
So I think, conditions in his area were, in terms of the geographical problems and in terms of the challenges, were something that would be at least spoken about. And when we visited the region, we would see vehicles bringing back soldiers from the posts, because there is a mandated period only for the troops to stay on those heights. And it is incredible, Suchet. I've always seen the army as this crisp, well turned out force. And then to see men who had overgrown beards, because shaving was not possible, it would the metal would actually stick to the skin in that cold. So there was no question of this upkeep that the army is so proud of and the turnout that they're so proud of. So in terms of what it did to the soldiers, it was very visible. Even though we were just there as visitors, it was very much there. Helicopter accidents were known and spoken about. The fact that at that altitude, helicopters, which are the lifeline more or less for a lot of the posts, there were constant news of the accidents that they would have, either because they were shot down or just because of engine trouble at that height. So we were aware of all this. But I think even in terms of the huge human price that was paid by the army was something that we heard as conversations that happened later, not at that particular point in time. At that point, I think my brother and I, in our own way, we were pretty giddy about this. We were very proud of the fact that our father had been selected for this command. We were very proud of the fact that, he was facing the other side and across the line of control. But there was almost a romanticizing to this picture. And that is why later years, when Dad would talk in passing about this, I would just tell him, because I'm married outside the army, right? And I would just tell him that people need to know. I mean, people need to hear about this human factor. It doesn't matter whether they know about, what is our situation in terms of the India-Pakistan issue, but the extent to which the army has, thrown itself beyond the call of duty is something that just needs to be spoken about more, and that's one of the things that we used to nudge and push him for, exactly as you said, the human factor.
I think that's specifically come out a lot in the book, which people normally would have no idea, right? How do you know what's going on at 22,000 feet 30 years ago, even today? Obviously, yes, realities would be a bit different, but I think the human angle really does come forcefully and importantly, I'd say, in the book.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I think somewhere between the valor and the victory, I know that Dad was very keen. I mean, that is at the heart of it, a big thing, right? The achievement to it. So a lot of the book does deal beyond that. It's beyond just the wars that were fought on the glacier. So
before we run out of time, I'd like to ask both of you. So if I could first ask you and then Anjali, what is the central theme or message you'd like readers to take after they put Siachen 1987 down? Just the final idea.
Leadership in every walk of life has got the similar principles or guidelines or, I think, parameters. In the army, it may be slightly a different aspect would be more critical. But I think in every walk of life, I think leader gets a mission or defines a mission. He makes a plan. He gives that plan to his subordinates or his teams. And at a certain point of time, having done that, if the leader doesn't withdraw and let the teams function, or if he tries to jump into the fray and try to do what the teams ought to do, his subordinates ought to do, I think there is a failure. And this is the most important lesson, because every time, every action which I will see in the book, I made a plan, I gave it to the troops, to the lower commanders, and I pulled back or held with my own headquarters just to monitor, because whatever you had to do, you have provided the resources, you have clarified your mind so that they are thinking in the same way as you are, and pull back. This is one of the most important lessons of leadership, which I would say applicable across the board for anybody, not only in the armed forces, corporate sector, or anywhere else.
Yes. So the idea that you give your sort of people or people who work for you or with you the facilities to excel, and then you watch them excel.
Also, you got to trust your team. You can't really say, whether he will do it or not, let me go and monitor. Then I think you have failed in building up your team and be able to depend on them to handle all criticalities that will come up.
Yes. Anjali, any final comments on the idea of the book or the message?
Yeah, I think, my dad and I were constantly asked, my brother in particular continued to ask us, for whom are you writing the book? Dad's friends who've been very, very closely, associated with the writing and would give him a lot of editing tips, would say, Ramesh, decide who you are writing the book for. And I would say that would be something that I would like to end with. The fact that both Dad and I embarked on writing this book for an audience that was across the board. I'm sure my father was looking more from the military aspect of it. I was looking at it from the non-military aspect of it. And I think because of that, we actually married it together to be able to present, go beyond the very simplistic words I would have used, balancing it with a very military angle that my father brought into it. So I think the idea was for the book to talk to everybody and each one take what they can from it. I also think that our effort was to separate the factual, informative part of the writing to the emotional, more involved, the more personal. And so I believe that that the book brings out not just the valor of the Indian soldier, for which my father, can talk at length about, but also about an area of the country that most people actually have no clue about. And so the hope is that through the book, they get an understanding of the region, the terrain, the men who are actually commanded to execute duties and who do it beyond the call of that duty as well.
So thank you so much, Captain Anjali Kulkarni and Anjali. Thank you very much for joining us. And we hope many people read the book and imbibe it and understand, as you said, the duty of those who go beyond the core of duty to protect the borders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siachen. Thank you for having us here.